You've probably had your computer infected by a virus before. Whether it's the shortcut virus that corrupts your documents or a virus that affects your operating system. But none of them compare to Stuxnet, the world's first truly sophisticated virus. Usually a common computer virus is written in a programming language. At most two. But Stuxnet was different. It was written in C, C++ assembly, FBD, IL, LD, ST, among several other object-oriented programming languages. Besides that, Stuxnet has 20 times the code size of a common virus. Stuxnet also doesn't have any bugs in its entire code, which is very rare in viruses. And it had a digital certificate, which guaranteed its authenticity and allowed it to access critical systems during its attack without raising suspicion. It also had 4 0 days in its code, which are vulnerabilities still unknown in computer systems like Windows. And it also had an operational deadline, meaning a date when it would stop working on its own, something even rarer in viruses. Stuxnet. What type of advanced virus is it? And why was it so feared? This story begins during the Nixon administration, when the United States decided to give a nuclear reactor to Iran as a gift for peaceful purposes. At the time, Mohammad Pahlavi was the leader of Iran and was considered an ally of the United States. Back then, the United States supported the idea of unity between Pakistan, which was already quite advanced in nuclear technology, and Iran, which still had no knowledge of nuclear technology, so that together they could build a nuclear plant in Iran, allowing Iran to take its first steps in nuclear technology for peaceful purposes. But what went unnoticed by the Americans was the clandestine transfer of blueprints for nuclear weapons projects, as well as equipment. In 2003, the Iranians began to fear that the United States would invade their country, and they agreed to pause their nuclear program. But in 2006, the Iranians realized that the United States no longer posed any threat to their uranium enrichment program, and they decided to resume it. That's when Israel joined forces with the United States to halt Iran's nuclear program. At the time, Iran's uranium enrichment program for creating atomic bombs was making rapid progress. On a regular workday, the engineers and technicians at the facility noticed that something was wrong. The computers kept shutting down and restarting constantly, and the centrifuges, which carry out the uranium enrichment process, were spinning at extremely high speeds, making the same noise as an airplane engine. So the technicians frantically tried to stop the process, but nothing seemed to work. Not even the various automatic safety systems could stop the centrifuges. Then a series of centrifuge explosions started happening at Iran's fuel enrichment facility, spreading uranium gas throughout the enrichment plant and leaving the technicians confused and not knowing what was going on. This led to several scientists and engineers being fired. After facing several explosions, the technical support team decided to contact Sergei Ulysin, who at the time was working at a small security company in Belarus, to help understand what was happening with the facility's computers. After the call, and after conducting some analysis, Sergei noticed that it could only be a virus unlike anything he had ever seen before, and decided to share his discovery with other security experts, including Yevgeny Kaspersky, founder of the Russian company Kaspersky Lab, which develops the well-known Kaspersky antivirus, who, together with his team, decided to analyze the virus in more detail, doing what they call a deep analysis, and this was done in the company's virus lab. The virus sample was also shared with Eric Sheehan and Liam Omerchu, analysts at the security company Symantec. Soon, they realized that the code was too sophisticated to have been written by an ordinary group of hackers, and that a typical group of 10 hackers would take 2 to 3 years to create it. It then became clear to the team that some country was behind all of this. The virus was named Stuxnet, derived from 2 words they found in the code, which when combined formed the infamous name Stuxnet. Analyzing the virus, the team noticed that the code was very dense, and it was 20 times the size of a standard virus, and it didn't have any bugs, and every part of the virus's code was designed to carry out an attack. In addition, Stuxnet only attacked Windows systems, and it had 4 zero days in its code. Zero day is the name given to a vulnerability in a computer system, such as Windows. This vulnerability is unknown to the software developer, and meanwhile, hackers can exploit it to break in and steal user data. And inside the Stuxnet code, there were 4 of these vulnerabilities, still unknown and ready to be exploited. It also had a digital certificate, which is an electronic file that guarantees the authenticity of software or online services, just like the ones we see on trusted websites. In other words, during the Stuxnet attack, it was seen as safe software, which allowed it to remain undetected throughout the entire attack. In addition, part of the code was written in a strange programming language. After some research, the team discovered that it was a programmable logic controller language, or PLC. But they weren't just any PLCs. They were Siemens PLCs. A programmable logic controller is a specific computer that performs control and monitoring functions for industrial equipment, such as motors, valves, pumps, actuators, among others. In other words, it's the computer that dictates how things should work in a power plant, a car factory, or a gas platform. And it was exactly these devices that Stuxnet was designed to attack. There were also some numbers in the code, which, until then, the team of analysts didn't know what they were. On the other side of the world, in Iran, the country targeted by Stuxnet, things were still bad, with centrifuges constantly exploding. A centrifuge is a device that separates uranium-235 from uranium-238. When uranium is extracted from the ground, it contains 2 types, uranium-235 and uranium-238, also called isotopes. To build an atomic bomb, or for a nuclear power plant to operate, you need several kilograms of uranium-235, but the uranium extracted from the ground is 99% made up of uranium-238. So some process is needed to separate uranium-235 from uranium-238. This process is called uranium enrichment, and it is done by a centrifuge. It does this by spinning a rotor, which spins at about 60 to 63,000 revolutions per minute, around 300 meters per second, the same as the speed of sound, creating a force more than 1,000 times greater than gravity. And since isotope 238 is slightly heavier than 235, it tends to accumulate on the walls of the centrifuge, leaving isotope 235 closer to the center. But since several kilograms are needed to make a nuclear weapon, the process is repeated through several centrifuges connected in series. And it was exactly this process that Stuxnet was attacking. As soon as a technician connected a flash drive infected by Stuxnet to install an update on the facility's computers, Stuxnet would infiltrate the systems. Once inside the facility, Stuxnet would spend 13 days just observing and recording all normal activities and operating parameters without carrying out any attacks. Then, after the 13 days of observation, Stuxnet would carry out the attack, increasing the rotation speed of the rotors to 1,408, about 80,000 revolutions per minute, causing the centrifuge to vibrate uncontrollably and reach resonance. Meanwhile, Stuxnet would send to the control computers the data it had recorded during the 13 days it spent just observing, making the computers believe that everything was working perfectly. And meanwhile, the technicians were frantically trying to shut down the centrifuges because of the enormous noise they were making. And Stuxnet intercepted this shutdown command and kept the centrifuges spinning faster and faster until they completely destroyed themselves. Stuxnet also had a deadline, a date when it would stop operating on its own. And that date was January 11, 2009, just a few days before the inauguration of the new President of the United States, then President Barack Obama.
Are you prepared to take the oath, Senator? I am.
The theory behind this is that it would be necessary to stop the attack once the new president and the new government took control, and new approvals would be required. Stuxnet was developed with the involvement of about 5 intelligence agencies. They are the CIA, the NSA, and the Military Cyber Command, all belonging to the United States. In Great Britain, the Government Communications Headquarters, or GCHQ, also participated, but the main agency in this development was Unit 8200, belonging to Israel. When Stuxnet became public, everyone refused to comment on its existence.
I don't want to get into the details. Yeah, I mean, my answer is because it's classified. I won't acknowledge. I don't want to get into the details. My answer is because it's classified.
I won't wisely, knowingly offer something that I consider classified.
First of all, I won't comment on the details of items that should be classified. Items.
In the end, more than 1,000 centrifuges were destroyed by Stuxnet. And that was the story of the world's first truly sophisticated supervirus.